Welcome to hashtag Real Talk with Rayla. I am your host, Rayla, and this is the show where we keep our topics real. Today we have with us a great friend of mine, Stephanie, of Stephanie Elizabeth Intuitive Coaching and Guidance. Did I get that right?
You did. Thank you.
Welcome, Stephanie, to hashtag Real Talk with Rayla. How are you?
I'm just taking it all in stride and enjoying getting a chance to be real and not feeling like I have to perform something here.
Right.
For having me.
You're welcome. I like that, being our authentic self, right? Taking that mask off. So if we took that mask off and we just kept it simple, in kind of simple terms, what is it that you do?
So I do coaching and I do readings for people, and all of it is something I use my intuition for. And I also help people to connect with their own intuition, whether through the readings where I read for you, and then in the coaching and mentoring, I work with people one on one to help them develop their own intuitive connection with their guides and building more trust in their intuition. So that's the basic thing, and for me, the goals are to help people access more of those innate gifts and resources that they have.
So that was a lot. Let's break it down into like some smaller pieces.
Yeah.
So if we broke it down, what was the first thing that you said you did?
So the first thing I do is readings for
Okay,
people,
so let's
intuitive
talk
reading.
about that. If
Yeah.
someone came to you for a reading, which I have done, what is it that they could like expect?
Yeah, so I do two different types of readings right now. The kind of my core offering, which was you were one of my beta testers many years ago, which I'm so grateful to you for that, because that really boosted my confidence. But I do birth chart readings, and they're soul centered birth chart readings. So I'm reading from your astrology birth chart and also just intuitively reading to give me, it kind of helps me narrow down how to interpret the chart because it's all an interpretation. So with that, it's really about celebrating you and just illuminating who you are as a whole person and the different dimensions of yourself and your life. And we also can talk about sort of, some of your life journey and what you're here to work on as revealed by your chart. So we'll talk about the gifts and the challenges and the things that are unique, and kind of just get really clear on who are you and what's your style and what are you here to do.
Yeah, I know one of the things that surprised me with my reading is I was like, oh my gosh, this person sees me. Like I felt so seen. Like it's different when you talk to someone and you're like, oh, this is who I am. Like you're sharing what you want them to know. But to have someone say, oh, I did all this work to find out who you are, and now I want to share that with you. And it was very emotional. like oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, like someone like actually really deeply gets me, right? And that's like such a gift,
Mm.
and it wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting someone to just say, oh, you're something is in Saturn and this is in that.
Yeah, all the jargon.
Yeah, and I thought it would be something like I could go anywhere, but it was so different and so unique, and like I still talk about it.
Hmm.
I don't even remember how many years ago that was. Let's talk about some other things that you do. You said helping people with their intuition, and I'm really curious about that. How would you go about like helping me do that?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, usually, so there's a couple of different ways that I help people with their intuition. One is through the coaching, which I'll say more about in a moment. And the other way is through my monthly free community events. It's called Spirit Hour. That's something I've been running for the last few months. And that's a free event where you can come in and I'll offer a guided meditation journey and you can connect with your guides through that. So that's kind of like a starting point. But in the coaching program, we do that, but it's personalized. So the first thing we would do is I would have my client fill out an evaluation where they'll start reflecting on what is my relationship to my intuition? What do I
Hmm.
already know about it? What has been working well? Where do I feel like I get stuck? Like just getting really clear on where they're at now, where they might have challenges that we can work on bringing support and see if there's a way to move through those challenges to get more access to the intuition. So, so we start there, and then we just really get directly into it of bringing the guides in. So I facilitate that process by guiding you through an experience in your body, and then offering you prompts to connect with your guides. And then, of course, if we have specific goals that we want to work on outside of the intuition, because it's
Right.
kind of two parts. It's like we're working on your intuition to build that skill set, to build that resource, and then we're actually also using it for
Yeah.
your life right now. So we're kind of doing both because it's all experiential
Well,
in our session.
who or what are these guides that you're helping them connect to?
Yeah. So there's a number of different guides that people have access to. So there's spirit guides, of course. These are spiritual entities, beings who have an interest in supporting you during your life. And they can come in many different forms. Sometimes we have spirit guides that are with us for a whole life. Other guides might be just kind of in a certain period of time when we need their particular support and insight. So the spirit guides are one. There's also ancestors or just like humans who have passed on. And that's a big one. I think, especially increasingly, people are really starting to connect with ancestors, like in a way, more people than
Mm.
before. And then the third sort of category, and this is maybe where my work is a little unique, is what I call your body guides. So your body guides are kind of like the intelligence of your body. And so
Hmm.
we'll connect in with your different energy centers, and you'll get a guide for each energy center. And then we'll again work with that guide. It's an easier way sometimes to work with and get access to your body's intelligence if you approach it as a guide, because you can have a dialogue and a conversation. And the way the guide comes to you will also have information for you. So those are kind of the three categories of who we're working with. And um, sometimes we work with them as a group, like as a council, or we'll go to a specific one depending on where they're drawn.
But the big focus is people are just getting really connected with themselves.
Yeah, they're
And
getting connected because all of your guides are available to you like through your inner world.
right.
And it's debatable, like, are they part of you? Are they not? I don't know. I have my opinion, but I can't say for sure. But either way, they provide support and insight and guidance that is actually useful.
Yeah.
So,
So will people like know that their guides are there?
so part of that is I help you like start to figure out how to pay closer attention and observe and notice what does this guide feel like? Like, what is the energy of this guide? So then I can notice if I feel their presence. And if I don't feel their presence, then we look at, is there something in the way? Like, is there part of me that's not ready to feel that? Because
Right.
I have a concern. And so we'll look at supporting that. Um, but really, it's just paying more attention. Like, that is the key core thing.
Mm.
And slowing down to do that. And I think it's much easier to do when you have somebody else holding the
Mm.
space for you and facilitating.
Right. I know that I think probably every time you and I have worked together, I'm like, oh, you feel that? Do you sense that? It's been like, I don't know, super, super powerful.
Yeah.
I know when we talked, you had said something about people having like common barriers. Can you talk about
Mhm.
some of those things?
Yeah. So the first one is just believing that you're not intuitive
Mm.
or you're not that intuitive. That's what I hear often. Like, oh, okay, I'm a little intuitive, but like I'm not that intuitive. I'm not like, professional psychic. That's what
Right.
people compare themselves to. And it's like, first of all, we don't need to all be professional psychics. Second of all, you might actually be able to gain that level if you work on it in practice. So I think we have a natural intuition to start with. But so those beliefs and just the story about like I'm not intuitive, it just isn't something for me.
Mm,
So that's number one. And number two, the other thing that comes up again, it really has to do with our mind, is all the minimizing, the self doubt, the, well, that doesn't make sense.
mm,
Well, are you sure about that? Like all the thoughts that come and the parts of us that come up when we're just even exploring intuition before like we even do anything with it. Right. So I always say, just get the data. Just receive the message, set aside needing to know everything about it and what you're going to do with it and whether or not it's true. Just get the message, see how it feels in your body, and
mm,
then you can bring your intellect to it like later. Is another layer, is another way of knowing. So I think just the way that in this culture we are taught that our minds and our intellect and like being rational, like that's the right way
mm.
to
Yeah,
know things and to make decisions. And that's the only thing that you should be consulting, or some external authority, of course.
right.
But so all that, like that's what we're how we're brought up. And so the notion of um, I have my own insight and I know how to tap into it and I'm gonna like put that into action to make my life better, that's so confronting.
Well,
So those are really the biggest barriers, honestly.
so like our show says real talk, like you're having like
Mhm.
real talk with yourself. And
Yeah.
I know it sometimes it can be scary,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
because sometimes people don't really want to, they're afraid to take a real good
Hmm.
look at themselves because they're afraid of what might come up. So if
Yeah.
someone has that fear, how can you help them move past that to be able to do this work?
Yeah. Well, the number one thing is they have to decide they want to move past it,
Mm,
right? Because
yeah,
sometimes we're not ready to take
right.
a step, and that's okay. I'm not an advocate of like pushing yourself into some drastic change in the name of personal growth. Like, I think if we can't support it in our nervous system, then it's not going
Mhm.
to be sustainable. So that's number one. Make sure, are you ready to take this step? And if you're not, then we'll try a different like avenue, you know. But
Yeah,
assuming the client like wants to move through this, then we'll just explore, you know, like what is this about? What is this part of you concerned about?
right,
What are you concerned will happen if you like, you know, look at this and feel this?
right.
And we will can even bring in guides sometimes just to bring in support
Mm,
for taking that step. And sometimes it's like, it's an exercise, right? Like you may feel like, well, you know, we brought in my guide, but I don't really feel them and I don't trust them. So that's okay. Just
right.
like, we'll just try it and see how it goes and try to reserve judgment.
I
That's such a key
know,
thing.
like one thing for me is that I was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna do this, and then Stephanie's gonna find out that I'm secretly some bad person. Or like,
Oh,
like you're afraid some like there's some deep down hidden bad thing that
mm-hmm.
you don't know about that all of a sudden is gonna be like illuminated, and
Yeah,
you're fearful of that.
yeah.
And I know like great things came up, and I was like, oh. Surprised and happy, and then coming home and going over it and, crying. Like, it's okay to accept, like, that I'm a good person. And,
Yeah.
it's okay to accept that my guides want to help me. And it's okay to accept the help. And I think that's really
Yeah.
hard for people, like
Mm-hmm.
accepting the help. Because I think we're kind of taught in our society, like, to do it yourself, pull yourself up by your
Mm-hmm.
bootstraps.
Mm-hmm.
And so for you to say, but there's guides here to help you, now people are like, but I was always told to, do it myself,
Yeah.
overcoming, that narrative that our society tells us.
Oh yeah, that's a huge one. I mean, like, and with that, you know, um, it can be hard sometimes to build that like impulse to bring in the guides.
Right. And I know
Sometimes like we
sometimes,
go to what's most dire. When it's dire, okay, fine, I'll ask for help. But your guides, like, they want to help you at every stage. Like, it doesn't have to be an emergency. Like, you can be having a great day and bring them in for additional support because you want to work on something or you just want company or whatever. So yeah, that's a huge thing. And I'll be honest, like I struggle with that too. Even
Yeah,
though this is my platform and this is what I help people with, like I'm also human and this stuff is so ingrained. And
right.
again, to your point, like it brings up things, it brings up like all the internalized messaging and conditioning around don't ask for help. You should be
Right.
able to do it yourself. That's crazy. Whatever the messaging happens to be.
We're not worthy of the help. Somehow we're not deserving. We have to
Yeah.
earn this help some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it right.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes like we forget, like like you said, you get to that rock bottom and you're like, oh wait, I could have been using my guides this whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have free will, right? So your guides
Right.
are always like, they're there, they're waiting, but you have to invite them in.
Right. Oh, I like that. Talk more about inviting them in.
Yeah. So, it can be just as simple as just like literally saying out loud or saying internally, like, if there's a particular guide you want to call in, or just if you don't even know who your guides are, you can just
Mm,
say, um, I'd like to invite support from my guides right now with blank, whatever it is you want support with, or I just want support right now. Or you could say, hey, can you just come sit with me?
mm,
And then observe, like, do you feel a sense of presence? Do you like when you imagine, and you can try to envision your guides with you also.
right.
I mean, we have all have our own ways of receiving intuitive insight. So not all of us have like the visual. But if you're someone who has visuals or like a strong imagination, if you were to close your eyes and imagine a guide sitting with you, notice what that does to your nervous system. It tends to relax us.
Mm,
And that's like honestly the thing that I do the most personally in my
mm,
day to day. It's just like picture them with me and I just feel myself relax.
mm. I often feel them like my body temperature will change, or
Mm-hmm.
I sense like a sensation of a wind. Sometimes it's a smell. Um, when my grandmother comes, I smell her and I'm like, oh, my
Mm.
grandmother's here. But I was somewhere, I can't even remember where I was the other day, and there was three of us talking, and I was thinking about like just like my guides and everything. And I guess I was really focusing, and all of a sudden I felt this big like whoosh. And the other people
Mm.
in the room go, did you feel that? And I was like, whoa. And I was like, that was for me.
Yeah, well, I know your people are on the next level.
Yeah, it was like, whoa. But it's also like for me confirming that what you taught me really works, because the people around me who don't even know what you did with me like sensed it as well. So
Mm-hmm.
powerful. Can you talk a little bit about supporting people who are neurodivergent? Just being neurodivergent myself, sometimes I'm a little nervous about doing stuff because I don't want to be weird or different or.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm also neurodivergent. I'm autistic and I have ADHD and probably other things. And I definitely have felt like a weird person my whole life. And so, number one, I mean, I just try to create a space where you can just be yourself and it's not weird. Like,
Mm,
I don't think you're weird because
right.
I'm weird too. And honestly, the weirdest people are like the most interesting people. I personally have a bias against normies. I'll just own that. Because I don't feel safe with them and I don't feel like they can see me. And so I really want to offer that gift to my fellow neurodivergent people, whether that's in a reading or in my coaching. And like, honestly, it is a thing that comes up a lot. Even so, like, even with making that explicit, it's all the things of should I say that out loud? Or like, do I
Mm,
sound selfish when I say that? Or does that sound weird? Or like, am I like making this too big of a thing? Like all those things, like they come up. And so it's just the quality of the space I try to hold, and I just try to be present with you and like explicitly tell people also, like, whatever, like if you have feelings, if you have emotions, if you have tears, like it's fine here.
right.
Like however you are is fine. You do you, you take care of yourself, and let me know what you need, because we all have different needs and we all have different ways. So sometimes like When we're working with the guide, sometimes somebody will struggle with like a particular approach.
Mm,
And it's like, maybe that isn't the approach for them. And instead of trying to make it work for them, we'll just pivot and take
mm.
a different approach. We'll look at like, what's going wrong here for you? And then we can pivot. So I try to just be, I try to just like meet people where they're at, really.
Oh, I think that pivoting is really helpful because
Mhm.
when I was struggling and you were like, but you have a choice. And I was like, oh, like, like we kind of forget that and we have to think like, society's like, you just go with it. And, you're
Mhm.
reminding of me that, oh, but you have a choice in everything, even in working with your guides. And,
Mhm.
that's super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how, if someone has, say, they have a reading,
Mhm.
and then I know you have ways that you can support people kind of like long term.
Mhm. Yeah, so I do the readings, those are a one-off. And I didn't mention, I think earlier, I didn't mention I also do Akashic guidance sessions, and that's with the Akashic record. So that's like an intuitive reading, again, from a soul perspective, that's more focused on giving guidance to your questions. But either way, like if you start with the Akashic guidance session or you start with a birth chart reading, then the next option would be to work with me in private coaching and mentoring. So right now, I work with people in 3-month increments for that. So if that's something folks are interested in, I would invite you to meet with me just for a free consult. It's just a like friendly chat, not a pressure sales thing. Like I don't expect people to get out your credit card on a call or whatever. Like I think giving that space is also part of my um, neurodivergent centered approach to my business. But yeah, so we would just talk. We just talk about what is it that you're wanting to change in your relationship to your intuition. Like, what do you want to gain? Like, and why? Like, what will be different in your life when you grow these skills and these really like relationships? Because that's what we're doing. We're building relationships and building more supportive relationships with ourselves, with the guides, with our intuition and our body. And so that's what we're doing. And so the coaching, it's a 3-month uh, experience and it's customized to whatever your particular goals are.
Mm,
And we'll work with the guides to make progress on those goals. And also just like it just creates a shift in people's relationship to themselves. And I've seen my clients consistently feeling more confident and feeling more at ease with themselves, like more inner peace. It doesn't mean
right.
we don't get stressed. It doesn't mean I love everything about myself now, or I never have a hard day. But it means like when something is challenging, we can support ourselves more. Like I can have my own back and I
Right.
can know my guides have my back too. And just be
Right.
nice to myself because we're so mean to ourselves.
We are. And I
We're
know
so
in
mean.
today's society, people have difficulties being by themselves, like spending time
Mm-hmm.
with themselves, knowing themselves. They always have to have something that distracts them. And, sometimes I think like, why are you afraid to actually know who you are? Because someone asked me, why do you enjoy spending time with yourself? Because I love myself. I love
Yeah,
learning about myself. I love finding the different things that have changed or, you know, getting to know myself better. And, I think one of the things that if they work with you, like they can realize, oh, I don't have to be afraid to spend time with myself and get to really know who I am. Because how can you really navigate in the world and figure out what you like as far as career or, relationships and friends if you don't actually know who you are?
exactly. I mean, like to give an example of that, I could look at my 20s. I mean, because I was trying to be a normal person still,
Right.
which wish I would have got the message sooner, but don't bother. But, but yeah, I married a guy and we had our married life and it was really boring. And I was just like, why am I so alienated? Why am I so bored
Mm,
with my life? Like, why am I so depressed? And like, eventually I realized, because like, I can't be myself with him, and like I don't even entirely know who I am, and I didn't even realize like, oh wait, I don't actually want kids, and he wanted kids. And
Yeah.
so it was stuff like that, and like that was because I didn't have that relationship with myself. And I was just really externally oriented to like, what do other people want from me? How do
Mm,
they want me to be? What do
right.
they think I should do? What's going to make me seem like a responsible, like reputable person?
And they like when I wear
And
this and
exactly. And when, you know, like he wanted me to be really domestic, and like that's just not me. And like, you know, we had like, he had some nasty words to me about that, but
Mm,
it's like, reality is it just wasn't a good fit. And so it took
right.
for me to learn more about myself, which really started towards my late 20s as I got into my Saturn return. And then we ended up getting divorced, and it was a good thing for both of us. So that's just an example to your point of like what happens when we don't have the opportunity, or we don't take the time to get to know more about who we really are and what our actual like needs and preferences and desires are.
And fully like accept ourselves. Because I know sometimes being neurodivergent, it's hard to accept
Mm-hmm.
ourselves because society tells us that we need to conform to the way that we are,
Mm-hmm.
that they are. And I know just like you, it took me to after my divorce to kind of figure out who I was. And then I was
Yeah.
like, oh, but I don't have to do this like everyone else does.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one too, right? Like, because
right,
some people will not get it, and some people will give you their opinion unsolicited, or they'll just give you the look, right? Or they'll ask those questions that are
right,
like, and it's like, okay, that's fine because I know what's right for me.
right.
Um, and so, yeah, getting to that place is really like I kind of feel like it changes everything.
I think it's freeing. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's so freeing, and you can like authentically be yourself and you feel good about it. And then
Yeah,
when other people say those things, it actually doesn't bother you
yeah.
because
It's
you know
like
who
that's
you are.
irrelevant. It's
Right,
irrelevant to me.
right.
Yeah.
So how can someone get connected with you?
Yeah. So the best thing to do is to go to my website, which is stephanie-elizabeth.com. And you can sign up there to get on my email list. And I send out emails like generally once a week, although I'm a little more sparse in the summer. But and like I mentioned earlier, I host a monthly spirit hour meditation circle. So you can also sign up for that on my website. And then I'm also on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And my handle for all three of those is Stephanie Elizabeth Intuitive. So would love to connect with you if you are resonating with me, or you're curious about what I do, or or whatnot. Like I'm very friendly. And I love to hear from people. So please don't be a stranger. You can email me or message me on social. I'd love to connect. Yeah.
As we say with hashtag real talk with Rayla, be real with yourself, be real with your body, and please connect with Stephanie Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for having me, Rayla. This was fun.
Thank you for joining me.